It's Checking In with Anthony and Glenn, teaching you to be the hotelier that you wanna be. It's Checking In with Anthony and Glenn.
Anthony.
I'm filled with anxiety.
Really? What are you so nervous about today, Anthony?
I just had to read a teleprompter. So tomorrow I have to be a moderator at the panel Forbes.
Right.
Because we're still at the Forbes.
Yeah, we sure are. I feel like we've been at this event for weeks.
Yes.
At this point.
But it's a great event. So I just read the teleprompter, and I don't read teleprompters because I just talk from the top of my head. Even when I do my keynotes, I don't read teleprompters.
Right.
So I'm just riddled with anxiety. What should I do, Glenn?
I say just quit. I mean, when it gets hard, just give up. That
is Glenn's motto. So, ladies and gentlemen, kids, boys, girls, dogs, animals, when it gets hard, just run away.
That's right. Well, I think
so I'm running away.
I think you're going to face your issues, and you are going to do absolutely terrific.
No, actually, I feel great about it.
I know you should be feeling great about it. So we are here. I'm excited that we're continuing our podcasting here. Though you folks are going to be hearing this over the next few weeks, we are at the Forbes Verified event happening at the end of February. It's a big celebration where everybody comes together to celebrate all of the 5-star winners from around the world.
It's truly the Academy Award of the hotel business. If you get a 5-star, if you are lucky enough that you live in that rarefied air, or I should say verified air, of five stars, it is like getting an Academy Award, and it's usually a lifetime of work. So this is a big event with the best and the brightest event of people in the industry, and I'm taking a lot of cards because I like vacations, and I'm calling a lot of favors after this event.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. Well, one guy we can't get a free hotel room from, but is very passionate about travel, is Mr. Roger Dow. He's the president and CEO of the U.S. Travel Association based in Washington, D.C. I've had Roger on my No Vacancy show, and I've had the pleasure of knowing him for a long time. Great to welcome you to Checking In.
Hey, good to be here, Glenn.
What's going on in the world of travel right now? When I spoke to you about a year ago, we were worried about a drop in international travel to the United States. I just saw recently an article that said perhaps the drop wasn't as much as we originally anticipated. Is that true, and how do you see it?
It's actually true. We just finished looking at through December, and international is up 2.8%, and everybody would say, isn't that, wow, terrific? But in reality, it's not, because what's happening is we're losing share in the U.S., and that's a real they're very concerning to us.
And this has been going on now for quite some time, and that's one of the reasons why this organization was even created, because after 9/11, and I'm not saying this for you, I'm saying this for the audience's understanding, our piece of the pie, while we maintained the same amount of tourism to the United States, the tourism pie had expanded so much, we were losing out on so much. We didn't even advertise in other countries to say, hey, come to the United States, it's an awesome place. So your organization was created to get people excited about coming to the United States again and helping support our $2.4 trillion in economic output industry.
Yeah, our whole reason to be is to get more people traveling to the United States, within the United States. And we went through an area that I actually watched a lot of destinations go through, where a politician will say, why do we even have to promote? Everybody knows about America. Everybody knows about, and then I'll say to the politician, so you don't have to campaign anymore. You've been a senator for 25 years. I think, well, that's different. That's different. Yeah.
Right.
So
it's always different when it refers to somebody specifically.
Well, if we can go back a little bit, you talked about that we're up 2.8%, but we're losing share.
Yeah.
Who are we losing it to, and why are we losing it?
We're losing to the rest of the world. What's happening is the rest of the world, actually, Anthony, it's been going on for 15 years, has discovered this darling we call travel and tourism, and a lot of governments look at it as the way they're going to employ people. And so everyone is saying, come to China, come to Thailand, come to the Caribbean, come to Mexico, and we were silent, and we're losing share to the whole world. Spain is growing phenomenally. France is growing. China is growing. Mexico has been growing, and although they're doing some silly things in Mexico that concern me if I was in Mexican tourism, because they cut out promotion.
Like, what do they do that concerns you?
The new president of Mexico said, I'm going to basically abolish the Mexican Tourism Board.
Why?
And because he was looking for some money to put elsewhere to build some bridges and some things like that. And it's, again, I think it's that perspective that I've heard in the United States from time to time. People will still come, and that's not true.
Right.
So we've lost short to all around the world.
So if we grew 2.8%, who had the largest growth? Which country would you say?
Spain had the largest growth.
Which was what?
Probably about 8 to 12% in there. Now it's on a smaller base. They don't spend as much.
Well, the reason they're probably growing because I did a show out there last year and I promoted Spain, so I probably single-handedly.
I think that was single-handedly. There's a direct line. It was when Anthony did his show, and they've never looked back.
No. No, but you know what? It's funny. Talk about shows. When you look at if I talk about this for a second, when you look at Good Morning America and Today's Show, and they basically plant themselves in the middle of New York and they show Times Square and they show how wonderful New York is, would you say that had a significant impact on tourism in America by showing New York City and showing how great our country is?
Oh, there's no question about it. And I think all of these things are helpful. But when you talk about us losing share, it started in 2015, okay? So, because people want to jump right away and say, oh, it must be Trump.
Right.
Now, as I've said to the president when I met with him, I said, you now own this. But the bottom line, it didn't start with him. It started with the dollar being really high, so it was more expensive to get here. Second, some weak economies. We saw South America, Brazil, Venezuela, and all that. Economies go, parts of Europe. And third, no one even talks about this, the growth of low-cost airlines in Europe. So it's basically happened is
growth of what?
Low-cost airlines. So you've got WOW Air, Ryanair, Norwegian Air, and if you live in Europe, you can go a lot of places very, very cheaply. So consequently, you put those three factors together, and it's more expensive to come to the U.S.
Yeah, I mean, I took a flight from Berlin to Gatwick in the UK.
Right.
35 pounds or something like that. So if I can go to another country for such a little bit of money that's relatively close, why would I travel all the way across an ocean to come visit the United States?
Yeah, if you're Germans who people from Germany love our beaches. Okay, to come to Florida, to come to California, it's going to cost you much more than it costs you to go to Kenya.
Right.
And so therefore, when they put it all together, so those factors, and then you add on our president not being as welcoming as we could be. And we've said, hey, it's not that hard. You just have to tell people, we want your business. We want the good guys. We don't want the bad guys. And I think it's a pretty simple message. Bad guys not wanted, good guys wanted.
Right. So when you're saying, I want to understand this. We grew 2.8% last year in tourism come to America. What was, before it started declining, what was the growth typically of a year? What would you see year over year?
I would say we had been growing about 4 to 5%, 6% a year for the past. Put it in perspective, we started pushing for easier to get a visa, more visa waiver countries, promoting America, and that's back about 2009. I'm going to say,
and you also did a great job at promoting the idea of more offices, so people in China wouldn't have to travel 1,500 miles to get a visa to come to the United States.
Precisely. And the bottom line, that we had 50 million visitors back in 2009 came to the U.S. We now, last year, had 81 million. And these are people who spend $4,500 per person when they come. They stay 16 nights. And as I also say to the administration, I said, these are great people because you don't have to educate the kids. You don't have to give them health care. You don't have to fill their potholes. And they go home and they say good stuff about America.
It's like being a grandfather.
Yeah, it's the same thing. You take care of them, and then see you later.
Back.
But let me put in perspective that we, in 2005, had 13.8% of the global long-haul market. Last year, we had 12.2%. That 1.5% is like $32 billion. It's 100,000 jobs. Everyone's talking about the Amazon half a headquarters moving out of New York. That's 25,000 jobs.
Why would you bring that up?
This is for Amazon Long Island headquarters, and you just have to tweak it a little bit. And it's they talk about a new manufacturing plant in Alabama, a Toyota plant, not even built yet, 4,000 jobs. Just that little share loss is 25 Toyota plants. But no one thinks of it in that perspective.
But at the same time, Roger, you and other folks promoting tourism have done a great job. I think about the AHLA. I think about some of the other organizations out there that have really clearly explained that, 1 out of 8 jobs is directly or indirectly created by our strong tourism economy. And that seems to be a line that you have to keep saying over and over and over again in order for people to understand how significant it is that we've moved to this service economy to keep adding jobs and to keep focusing on this as a way of business.
Yeah, and I also think we make a mistake as an industry talking too much to ourselves about ourselves. And just those numbers are great, what you just said. But I think we've got to translate this thing into travel and tourism is the front door to economic development. Nobody bought a second home till they went and visited. Nobody moved to corporate headquarters. They went and visited or had a meeting there. It all begins with travel and tourism, and we've got to do a better job of saying, hey, if you want to grow your economy, grow travel and tourism.
Right. But at the same time, I'm seeing a societal shift. I think we're much more, and Anthony, you can comment on this, that we're more of an experiential economy now as opposed to a materialistic economy. So I get the sense that people do want to travel, be it within the United States or to the United States as well. Anthony, are you seeing that anecdotally?
Well, I want to know what Roger thinks.
I think experiential economy, there's no question about it. I mean, that younger people especially are looking at this as a right. I mean, when I was my children's age, I thought international travel was a week at the Jersey Shore.
Or Disney World.
Or Disney World. But now...
Epcot, that's international travel?
I mean, my kids are 16, 17 years old. They've been to, Japan. They've been to Spain. They've traveled. And these people look at it as a right. And this whole experiential economy is critical. And I'm seeing a lot of people who say, I'll spend money on travel more than I'll maybe, put a second room on my home.
So let me ask you a question. First of all, for our audience, again, I want to back up a little bit. Tell the audience what your organization does.
Sure.
And then I'm going to ask you a question about how challenging it is. But go ahead and explain what it is that you do.
Okay. U.S. Travel is an entity that represents the entire travel industry. So we've got about 1,300 members. But our big members are the people that are on what we call our board, 150. But all the hotel companies, all the rental car companies, all the attractions, Disney, Universal Studios, SeaWorld.
Airlines.
So the members pay a fee to be involved.
They pay a fee and dues. And what we do is we go out and work with the government to keep the government from doing stupid things, which is full-time employment for me. But the bottom line is, if you think of the things that you may think about, people that travel a lot, if you look at TSA PreCheck, we were behind making that happen. Global entry, where your fingerprints just get you back into the country, we were behind making that happen. When we started, there were 27 visa waiver countries back since the 1980s. There's now 38. We added 11 visa waiver countries by just working with government and saying, this is the way to build your economy. This is the way to build jobs. When South Korea went in the visa waiver program, they went from 450,000 South Koreans to 800,000 in 1 year.
Oh, my goodness.
So explain the visa waiver program.
Okay, the visa waiver program, I like to say, is the best program with the lousiest name. Visa waiver program are countries, it's mostly the Western European countries, Japan, Australia, and New Zealand. Okay, and these are countries that you can come to the U.S. with just your passport. You don't have to get a visa. All the other countries, you've got to get, if you're coming from Argentina or Brazil or China or India, you've got to get a visa. And you got to stand in line at the U.S. Embassy, tell them why you want to go, get them to stamp your passport and give you a visa.
And how long does that process usually take?
That process, before we started at it, could take up to 3 or 4 months to get your interview. Now it's down to 3 days.
Okay.
And that 3 days, because we just helped and worked with the State Department to cut out a lot of bureaucracy. I mean, can you imagine if you had to stand on line for and wait for 3 years, for 3 months, for people to say you can go to France? Would you ever go to France?
Never.
Hell no. But the bottom line, we were doing that to people coming from China, India, and Brazil, saying you wait 3 months, and then in 3 minutes we'll interview you, and we'll say yes, you can come to the U.S. No, you can't come to the U.S. Mm-hmm. And so the visa waiver program, you can just come with your passport. And it sounds, we're trying to change the name of it because it sounds like we're looking the other way.
Right.
In reality, the visa waiver program is a treaty between countries that is layered security, knowing who the person is, tied in Interpol, lost and stolen passports are reported. It's much more secure than the visa program, and that's why we should get more countries into it.
So it's more in the flavor of pre-check or clear or these other things are already pre-approved and you could just show up. It's kind of like, Anthony, I don't think about anywhere in the world. The only country I've ever gone to where I needed to worry about it is China. Everywhere else, I just get on a plane, show up, and they let me in their country. And it's shocking that we don't do the same thing in a lot of instances, except thank God for gentlemen like you and the women that help promote this sort of thing to make it so much easier for people to just arrive.
I couldn't get into China.
Why not?
I didn't go.
That first step makes it very hard.
So he walked right into it. So okay, you're a hotel guy. We're going to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
But right now, with what's happening politically, when you're talking to other countries and you're saying, come to our country, what's the first thing that they say?
Well, it depends on who I'm talking to, okay? Because if you talk to the media, they're saying, their hair's on fire about your president, what your president says. In reality, we've done a lot of research, and people separate politics and policy pretty clearly. You and I will go to Moscow. You and I will go to China. You and I will go
regardless
to Cuba.
Of Putin, right.
And not even think about it.
Not even think about it.
But it's funny that we assume that others would be thinking about it.
Yeah.
That's a very American thing to do.
No, exactly. We think that in reality, the media is on fire, as I say. They're, very anti-U.S. at times. But the traveler's not. What the traveler's more concerned about is how much does it cost? And the one that's popped up that concerns me, and I don't know what to do about it, is crime. We're seeing crime become a reason why people are not coming to the U.S. or why they're saying they're concerned about crime.
But where are they getting that? Because if you look at New York City, for example, it's safer than it's ever been.
Yeah, because they're getting the headlines of these
the rhetoric.
A shooter, and they're seeing the headlines and saying U.S. must be you're going to get
so
shot in
they're
the
seeing
street.
these mass shootings and they think it's happening everywhere.
They think it's happening everywhere. They think it, and parents are saying, "Gee, I don't know if I want my kid to go to school there." So this crime thing has risen to wasn't ever a factor in the U.S. to now a concern.
So it's not so much. I would imagine if you look at the statistics for crime in the last 10 years in America, I'm sure crime has gone down overall.
Absolutely.
But the perspective is that it hasn't.
Precisely, the perspective, the headlines, and all this.
Did I say perspective or perception?
Yeah, you said perspective, but
both perception and perspective. Both are a challenge, and we've got to deal with this because we're getting the reputation that America may not be safe.
So how do we deal with it?
I think what we do is we've got to tell the facts. We've got to talk about what Glenn just mentioned. Is New York City is one of the safest places in the world to be today.
Well, all of our big cities are extremely safe at this point. Maybe you can make an argument that maybe Chicago is not, but anywhere tourists go, it's super safe as well. So, is it possible to break through all of those news headlines and get people to feel confident again that they can come here, even though every single day they're being inundated with misleading truths?
I think we've got to keep telling the story, whether it's Brand USA, whether it's everybody, of how safe it is, and one of the greatest, safest places to be, because that doesn't come through. But you and I know that. I mean, tell me the number of stories where tourists have been killed, and I think around the world where tourists have been kidnapped, killed, whatever.
Actually,
that doesn't happen here.
It's funny. One of the places that and I don't know if I'm right or wrong here, and I don't want to disparage your country, but the one place that I don't feel safe, and I've never been there, it's France. I don't know why, but it just seems like France is a place that has been in the news a lot, and I wouldn't feel safe going to France. So, am I wrong? Or
this has cost France billions of dollars. France has do a few things that have happened in France have had people question whether they go to France. France has a much bigger problem than we have in this area. But exactly what you just said, we're seeing actually play out in numbers.
I just had a friend move to France, and his apartment got broken into. And he's devastated. He just moved there. I mean, he lived in Europe for a long time. Then he came back to the States, and then he went back to France. So, yeah, so I understand. But how do you, first of all, I don't know if you're allowed, you can say, but how much money do you spend in marketing? What kind of marketing do you do? And what is next for 2019, 2020?
Okay. Well, first of all, 10 years ago, the U.S. had no marketing whatsoever. Every other country was 150 million, 100 million, 200 million. Come to China, come to Mexico, come to the Caribbean. That's why you see all these ads. And we were silent. And so we created something called Brand USA. And Brand USA is a very unique situation where money is paid by visitors, people from visa waiver countries. Every 2 years, and it's good for 2 years, will pay $14 when they electronically register to come to the United States. And that's the same information you filled out when you used to look for that slip you couldn't find on the plane just before your landing. Mm-hmm. Same information, nothing more, but you pay $14. That goes into a pot, and it can build up to $100 million. And the travel industry in the U.S. can get money out of the pot to promote America by putting $1 in. Dollar in, $1 comes out. So now the U.S. has gone from zero in 2009 to a $200 million marketing campaign. So we now have one of the largest marketing campaigns
but how does
in
that,
the world.
Okay, so I understand. So I try to understand. When I come in and I fill that out, and it's $14 every 2 years, it goes into this pot. Now, you're one organization among several organizations that represent Travel to America, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so how do you get that? How do you get that money?
Okay, so an entity was created, and it's not U.S. Travel. It's we created. It's a separate organization called Brand USA, and Brand USA is, I like to think of it as a destination marketing organization for the United States. They do what NYC and Company does for New York, or what Visit California does for California. So, and the nice thing about that is, Brand USA now has that $200 million to spend. The neat thing about it is it levels the playing field. If you're from New York City, if you're from Florida, California, Las Vegas, they got a lot of money to come to those places. But if you're South Dakota or somewhere, you don't have any money. But what Brand USA allows you to be surgically and to go out and say, I want to promote in the Scandinavian countries. I want to promote only in Germany or whatever.
So how do they get that money? How does South Dakota get Brand USA money to do that?
What South Dakota does is they'll pay money into Brand USA, and Brand USA, because they have the money coming in from the tourists, can augment their dollars. So South Dakota may have been only able to spend $1 million. Now through Brand USA, they can spend $2 million.
Okay, got it.
And be more effective.
And they can use it however they see fit.
They can use it however they see fit in a way, but it goes through Brand USA. Brand USA actually, and the other thing Brand USA does is they've created these tremendous IMAG, the big IMAX movies.
I was just going to bring that up.
On national parks, on
for
music.
the 100th anniversary for the national parks, and that to me is such a clever way of promotion, because it's not a hit you over the head ad. It's this great vision that you watch on this massive screen, and you go, look at these incredible, natural environments in all the different places in the United States.
Back up, because I don't know what you're talking about, so the audience may not know what you're talking about.
What Brand USA did is they went out to McGillivray Films that has done everything from the longest vacation. They started back in Australia with the surfers and all that. But they do these IMAG films, and they commissioned them to create one about the national parks. And now, once they created it, then it's been playing all around the world. Other countries are showing it in their IMAX theaters. And now they created a second one of the music of the United States, from New Orleans to Philadelphia to Chicago. And now they're going to do a third on the food and the cuisine of the U.S.
Now, who created that?
Again, McGillivray, I sorrow their name, that does these IMAX pictures, created it, but Brand USA actually paid for it. And then these theaters pay to use this theater. So it's almost self-fulfilling.
So what I understand is Brand USA needs a host to go around to all the luxury hotels around the country and show the great food, wine, and rooms.
That's the job I'm starting next week. Sorry.
No. So I'm applying for that position. Thank you very much. But it must be frustrating. Okay, talk about your career. You're the guy. You work for Marriott.
Right.
And the way I came up in this industry, if I ever worked for Marriott for even 30 seconds, I'd be fired the 31st second, because I am not really good in a corporate environment. Believe it or not.
Oh, stunned me.
Shocking, right? And so I would have been fired a long time. So I went in a completely different way. I was a fixer. I turned around independent hotels and did my thing. And so, and I'm happy I did. So I would imagine you're used to some structure and the corporate hierarchy, and I'd imagine that kind of bleeds into what you're doing now.
Yeah.
But at least you can see, like, if you're marketing a hotel, if you're marketing the whole organization, you have, you can look at a report and see things going up. You can look at RevPAR. You can look at a lot of things to see that your efforts are having results. In the position you're in now, how do you basically grade yourself? And is it frustrating to deal with a political environment that is not conducive to really talking about how wonderful this country is? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, and it does. And the way I measure is I look at how many people are traveling. As I said, when I got into this job of international travel was 50 million international visitors, and they spent $120 billion in the U.S. We now have 81 million international visitors who spent $260 billion in the U.S. So it's a monster. So just that's a measure that I can see clear as can be. When we started working with China, in 2009, there were 300,000 Chinese visitors came to the U.S. Last year, 3.2 million. Chinese visitors spend $7,000 per person. But as I said earlier, the neat thing is you've got all these people going back to China saying, wow, I've seen something different. I've seen America. I've said to Condoleezza Rice, I've said to Hillary Clinton, I've said to John Kerry, Rex Tillerson, all of them, this is your stealth public diplomacy. What's it worth to you to have 10 million more people, 20 million, going home somewhere around the world saying that place America is pretty special?
And they're not looking at Fox or CNN and seeing it through from their vision. They're seeing it through their own. And one of the things I get a lot as a New Yorker, when people come to New York and say, everybody in New York's so nice. I'm like, well, just don't get in our way when we're going to work and when we're coming home from work. And we're really nice.
That's right.
But if you look at a New Yorker at 8:30 in the morning trying to get to work on time and you ask them where's the Empire State Building, they're probably going to use.
The answer's not going to be. Let me take you there.
Yeah, it's just not gonna, but
although they do that in Japan.
Yes.
But seriously, New Yorkers are nice and Americans are nice, and I think we have. I think people have a misconception. But I guess what I'm trying to say is I couldn't imagine dealing with politicians. Like, just talk to me a little bit about that.
For me, it was one of the more difficult transitions coming from the corporate world. Now, see, my career, I got a summer job as a lifeguard when I was in college at this hotel called Marriott that had 6 hotels. When I graduated from college 3 years later, the general manager said, why don't you go work for Marriott? I couldn't get a job. The economy was rough. And he said, someday Marriott might have 100 hotels. And I went
Are you serious? Not that long ago, Marriott only had 6 hotels?
6 hotels when I was in college. So I went to work with Marriott hoping they'd have 100. Well, today, merger and start, they have 7,000. When I left Marriott to do this job, they had 4,000. And so it was one of those things. But one of the frustrating things is in the corporate world, I was head of sales and marketing at Marriott, and I'd say, let's do something, and it got done. And for me, the frustration to deal with is the time it takes to do something. Brand USA took us 2 years, most common sense thing in the world, but took us 2 years to create and
that was not wanting government money. I can imagine if you did want government money, how more difficult it would be.
So you don't get government money?
No,
because it's the program is self-funded by those visitors.
Yeah.
Right. So if I was going to run against the president, I'm going to wear a hat that says Brand USA. He wears Make America Great. I'm going to wear Brand USA. That's a good way to counteract that hat,
like
right?
That, yeah.
If I was going to run for office, but I just love that brand as a branding and marketing guy and a personal branding guy. I just love the brand. I mean, I want everybody in America to be wearing those hats and those shirts. That's just an incredible brand.
Right. All right. I want to talk more about what it's like being on Capitol Hill and interacting with these people. In particular, when a new freshman class comes in, Congress folks come in. So we'll talk about that. Let's just go to a break real quick and be right back after this message. Hey everybody, Glenn here. So listen to this. Cobblestone Hotels is celebrating their 10th anniversary, and man, have they accomplished a lot in the last decade. Already they have more than 150 hotels throughout the United States, but they're in smaller and medium-sized markets. Those markets that the big franchise companies, they're underserving, they're overlooking, and in some cases just ignoring. But Cobblestone is an expert in these markets. And their president and CEO, Brian Wagernes, listen, I've gotten to know him in the last 10 years, and he has worked every job possible, including being an owner and operator. I can personally vouch for how awesome this company is, how awesome he is as an individual, because he understands the importance of finding the right combination of hotel brand and franchise owner. He's also an incredibly dedicated professional. Whether it's a Cobblestone Hotel and Suites Main Street design, Borders Inn and Suites, or one of the newly acquired brands such as Boulders Inn and Suites, Key West Inns, Centerstone Inns and Suites, Cobblestone has brands that range from economy to upper mid-tier, and one that's right for you. Quite simply, Cobblestone Hotels is the franchise for franchise owners. Patrick Mullenix, well, he's Cobblestone's new president of franchise development. Give him a call or check out their website at cobblestonefranchising.com. But give Patrick a call. He's a great guy. I've known him for a really, really long time, too. You can find him at 920-216-0620. That's cobblestonefranchising.com. And tell him Glenn sent you. All right, and we are back. Thanks again for checking in with us. So, Roger, in November of this year, we got a whole new class of people just starting in Congress. It's their first time. So what's the process for you like, getting to know these people, getting them to trust you, and getting them to listen to what you have to say?
Well, the process is very simple, is that we go out and meet with every single new congressman because it's an education process. And the challenge with Congress is it turns over, and you got so many of these people, over 100 congressmen, first-time congressmen. Years ago, I stumbled across a fact that stunned me that only 25% of Congress had a passport. Now it's up to about 35%.
That's insane.
Yeah, and you think of it, so how can this be? But then you think of it, of someone who's elected to Congress who maybe is coming from Nebraska, coming from South Dakota. They have no reason to travel. Maybe they went to Canada once, but the bottom line, They didn't need a passport.
Right, back then you didn't need a passport to get to Canada. It's only what, in the last 5-6 years, right?
Exactly. So just to educate these people, and the thing that frustrates me is I watch these young congressmen come on board, and I'll meet with them. I'll meet with them as a class, and we'll talk about it. And I'm going to be different. I'm going to be very different than the rest of the people. I'm here. I said I'm going to fix things, and I say to myself, how long is it going to take until they're just part of it? And what happens in Congress, I don't care whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, is the senior people sit down with you and say, Glenn, you're a new congressman.
Get in line.
Right.
Get in line, or you'll never see a committee. You must just sit in your office, or you can get in line and vote the way we tell you.
That's really interesting, and I'm seeing it happen right now with the current freshman class that's coming in particular on the Democrat side. They made a whole lot of noise, and now everybody seems to be following the game plan.
But that's interesting you say that, because I didn't realize how you control a congressman is by committee. Mm-hmm. Meaning if you don't, like you said, you don't get in line, then you don't get on committee. If you don't get on committee, what do?
You're useless, right? Because you don't have any power.
I don't know. Are you useless? I don't know how it works.
You can. You're just sidelined. I will not give you his name, but a governor of a state who became a senator a few years ago, and I met with him in July, and he said, Roger, has anyone ever quit? He said, I'm not stupid. I knew this was a challenge. I never knew how bad it was. Mm-hmm. He said, I've been here for 6 months, and I've taken one vote. 6 months, one vote. He said, this is ridiculous. And that's a governor. He said, when I was a governor, I could get stuff done. So the challenge I have, let me put this in perspective. Brand USA, when Bush was president, we got it passed through the House of Representatives, and the vote was like 320 to 92. Next week, the financial crisis hit. Nothing could go through the Senate.
When you say you got it passed, what did you get passed?
The legislation that created this entity called Brand USA.
Great. Okay, got it.
And that was back in 2008. Okay. So fast forward, Obama gets elected. 4 months later, Harry Reid gets it to the floor. There's another vote. Brand USA passes again, almost identical vote, 320-something to 93 against it. In that 5 months, we didn't change one comma, one period, one T, one I. The only difference was the 92 people who voted against it when Bush was president were all Democrats. When the 93 people who voted against it when Obama was president were all Republicans. The exact same bill. And that showed me what is the challenge we face. 93 people who hated something now loved it. 92 people who loved it now hated it.
So now it's 10 years later. Yeah. And it's become even more challenging for you because I think that both parties have become so split, so I would say segregated. They're almost in their own camps.
Almost.
I'm trying to be polite. How do you get anything done to actually get people to cross the aisle when it's something that you know is good for America because something that the government didn't have to pay for still didn't get 90-something votes?
When I first went in this job, publication that is around Capitol Hill called Roll Call.
What year did you come in?
2005.
Okay.
And I was head of global sales for Merit at the time. And they did a little profile and they said, what's it like being a lobbyist? I said, well, first of all, I'm not a lobbyist. We have lobbyists. I'm not one. I said, but it's no different than anything I've ever seen in my life. It's sales. You're basically sitting down with a congressman and saying, for your constituents, this is what makes sense. The nice thing about travel and tourism is we wear a white hat. Right. So we're not like something that people have anathema towards. But the bad thing about travel and tourism is people think our industry is frivolous. Even though we're $2.4 trillion, even though 1 in 9 Americans, 1 in 8, 1 in 9 get their job from it, they still think we're the fun boys and girls, the vacation folks. And they say, you're not serious like manufacturing or healthcare or whatever.
Well, you are manufacturing.
And you are healthcare.
You're manufacturing vacations.
Everything.
But not just, I'm thinking about business travel alone. Travel is the economic engine for everything else in our country. Yeah. Without a robust travel business,
Look at New York without travel.
Would collapse.
New York without travel, forget it. It would collapse.
President Macy's just came out today and said, one of the challenges I have is fewer international travelers, and my business depends on it. I talked to the president of Saks years ago in New York City. He said, if without the international travelers, I'd have to close my doors. He said, they represent over 40% of my profits. Mm-hmm. New York City and Company, the international travelers represent probably about 25% of the people that come to New York City, almost 50% of the dollars.
When I was I was going to the Christmas tree in Rockefeller Center maybe 5 years ago with my kids, I said, take notice of how many people are speaking English. I didn't even say take notice of how many different languages you hear. Take notice of how many people speaking English.
Because
everybody is from a different country when they're coming during Christmas.
So kind of like just riding the F train.
Well, Anthony and Glenn, that's one of the big problems that we have is all the media is in New York.
Right.
So when I was trying to convince the media that there was a problem with international travel 10 years ago, they're going, what problem? Every store I go into, everyone's speaking different languages.
Right.
So it was a real problem because New York City had a much greater share of international travelers than any other city.
And I think it still might be a problem because you look at New York, you look at L.A., Orlando, even like Chicago, they get, I would say, a lion's share of all of these international travelers. The real trick is got to be getting them to go to the other parts of the country, like the South Dakota that you were mentioning earlier.
Yeah. Well, the thing that I look at international visitation is I look at New York City, Orlando, Las Vegas, L.A., places like that as the training wheels. When people make their first trip to the United States, they come to New York City and they stay 2 weeks. Okay? The next time they come back, they stay 8 days. The next time they come back, they probably spend a night, go somewhere in the United States for 13 or 14 days, and spend another night. So because people say, well, gee, the big cities are getting more in their fair share. I said the big cities are the training wheels for them to come to South Dakota.
Right.
People want to see the authentic America.
And I'll say right now, I think if you just look at Chinese travelers, for example, they all came over the first wave in the package tours in the big cities. Now they've gained that confidence that they could travel on their own, and they're going to new destinations for them throughout the United States.
And even as an American, and we travel to Disney World, California, Chicago, and because of my job, and I've traveled so much around the country, I've been to 40 states. When I went to Mount Rushmore, like I've seen Mount Rushmore a million times on TV, I was like, who cares? I'm not going there. I don't care if I go there or not. So we were filming somewhere in South Dakota, And the director said, hey, we're going to go up to Mount Rushmore and we're going to start the show from Mount Rushmore. I was like, why are we going to waste all that time, all that energy, spend half a day traveling up there? I got up there. Have you been to Mount Rushmore?
No, but I did see it on TV.
Okay. Have you been to Mount Rushmore?
Yes, I have. It's fabulous.
Oh, my God. You're like, first of all, it is absolutely breathtaking and overwhelming. And second of all, the people that run it, it's just amazing. Matter of fact, we got arrested there because we were filming without a permit. Uh-huh. We were only still allowed the permit till say 11 o'clock in the morning. And my director said, "Don't worry, I'm going down the road to leave." And he said, "It's 11:05. Don't worry, keep filming." And woo, and we got arrested. And we got detained for 3 hours at Mount Rushmore.
Wow!
So they're serious about if they say don't film, don't film. But my point being is, when I went up there, then I fell in love with the entire area. You know, so these iconic attractions take you there, and then you fall in love. And I've literally fell in love with America in traveling to all these states. And I'll tell you something. I want to go to Cody, Wyoming so bad with my family. Have you been to Cody?
No.
It's
unbelievable. I've never been to Wyoming.
It's unbelievable. And so the more you get people outside of the big cities, the more they'll fall in love with America.
Well, and you go to Mount Rushmore, and then you go down the road to Crazy Horse, which Mount Rushmore can fit in just the cheek of this Indian that is so monstrous. You've never seen anything like this in your life.
How far have they gotten on that so far? Because I know
they're going much farther.
They had run out of money, but then
it was some guy started it back in the 40s or 50s by himself, but now there's a whole.
Explain that. I don't even know about that. What is that?
It's a large rock formation. They're chiseling out Crazy Horse, this Indian chief who's got his arm outstretched. On his arm 80 people can stand on his arm. I mean, this thing literally is 50 times bigger than Mount Rushmore. It's a monster, and it's this giant Indian, and it's probably 50% done right now. It's fact. But when I went to South Dakota, to what you're talking about, Anthony, is that I'm driving down the road with my wife, and a buffalo is walking down the street like a dog walks in my neighborhood. Yeah. And I'm looking right along, and I've got a picture of this white line and this buffalo. And this stuff. And the other thing is, you mentioned these places. Our national parks are places the international visitors love. I mean, there's more international visitors going to national parks than there are domestic visitors, but it's a problem. We haven't been keeping up our national parks, and their backlog of, they're really starting to fall apart.
Well, speaking about things falling apart, I wish our government would actually pay attention to the infrastructure issues that we're having, because I think if they were able to improve the travel conditions and the national parks and all that, it will, in the end, help tourism. We need, you spend a lot of time working on trying to get better airports, and they're starting to improve. Now we got to focus on our roads and our parks and the other stuff.
Glenn, we had 25 years ago, we had the 25 top airports in the world. And maybe Heathrow or a couple were thrown in there, but we had the top 25.
And LaGuardia, best airport in the world.
Absolutely, LaGuardia is the best. But the problem is
the third world.
But the problem is now there's an airport being built every month in China. I mean, and these world-class airports, we've fallen so far behind. So I asked my chief economist. I said, we're right now at 80 million visitors. What happens when we get to 100 million? And she said, simple. It's 5,000 more visitors a day at JFK. 4,000 more in Miami, 4,000 more in LA. Can you imagine trying to get 5,000 more people through Kennedy? And that's our Achilles heel. What's going to hurt us in travel long term is our infrastructure hasn't kept up, and you don't build these things overnight.
Look at the trains in New York City. It's crazy.
I think it's crazy that you can't just go straight from JFK straight to Manhattan. Yeah. You've got to do the Fakakta Air train to the Long Island Railroad or the subways. It's a pain in the neck. But, what are you going to do? Maybe one day.
But the good news about LaGuardia is they're spending billions and billions of dollars, and it's going to be a great
I think
airport.
It's amazing. Watching them build a new airport on top of the old airport is the coolest freaking thing.
It's extraordinary. And at the end of the day, it's going to be special. I mean, I love airports like LaGuardia, Washington, Reagan. They're close to a city. I mean, the great thing about LaGuardia, you land and
you're right there.
Yeah, you're there. Same thing in Washington. I mean, if it wasn't for Congress, I don't think Reagan Airport would exist. Yeah. But the Congress people love landing there, so I think we're good for a while.
The best part is if you're flying into LaGuardia, a lot of times they'll take you from south to north, and you'll go right over Manhattan and Brooklyn, and
gorgeous.
It's the coolest view you can imagine.
Yeah, so I can't wait to that airport, because right now when I go to LaGuardia, whoo! I remember when I first started doing construction. You literally saw people getting dropped off on the highway and basically dragging their luggage like a quarter mile
You're right.
to the terminal. It's crazy. I have a great driver, Robinson, who drives me, and he knows every little move and every little turn, so I usually get in with no problem. But it really is fascinating, especially going to other countries. I remember the first time I went to Germany, and I dropped into the airport, and I was going through the airport going, oh, my God. This is amazing. Or when I went to Turkey, I was in Turkey and I was in the Turkish Airlines lounge. Have you ever been to the Turkish Airlines lounge in Turkey?
Yeah.
Oh my God! You think you're in the terminal of the airport? It is amazing.
Wow.
And it's huge. And you have a movie theater, and you have a little all kinds of games. It's just amazing. Absolutely amazing.
That's one of the best airports in the world, and they're doing something really smart. If you fly Turkish Air, you can get off in Istanbul, spend 2 days there, get back on the plane, and go wherever you're going with no additional charge. And if more airlines would figure this out. They figured out people want to go to Turkey, but maybe someone's on their way to China or somewhere, but they can literally land in Istanbul.
I love that.
Spend 3 days, get back on the plane, and as if they bought a ticket from New York to China.
Yeah, because I've always wanted
like
to. I've always wanted to do stuff like that, but the most I can get is like 6-hour layover, and that's just not enough time to go into the city that you want to see and have a meaningful experience, and then head back to the airport. So I wind up just sitting in like the Amsterdam airport all day.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd think maybe at our airlines it'd be interesting they could figure this out, because we all know if you want to get a nonstop ticket, it's much more expensive than if you route yourself through Chicago. So then why doesn't the airline say, I'll tell you what, you can fly to Chicago, spend 2 days in Chicago, get back on the plane and go to L.A. for the same price as a New York-L.A. ticket. People would do it in droves.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you just made a good business case for that.
So let
Do you
me
hear that, Ed Bastian, CEO of Delta?
So let's back up to the hotel business for a second. You were basically one of the beginning employees of Marriott. So say if they have 6 hotels, back then they had a couple thousand employees, right?
Right.
What is the biggest change you've seen, not Marriott specifically, but in brands, from the day you started to really make traction in this industry, not as a lifeguard, but as a manager? And now, what is the biggest change you've seen, both positive and negative?
I think the biggest change I've seen is the proliferation of brands. Marriott now has 32 brands. Hilton might have like 14 or something like that. But you're seeing these lifestyle brands and the transition, and it's like how thinly can you slice the bologna? And I think when we were at Marriott, we were trying to decide, could we expand any further? So they invented Courtyard Hotel. So they had 2 brands, but now 32. And I think it's very hard. The biggest transition I'm seeing is I think the pendulum can also swing too far to too cute, and maybe maybe be too millennial in a way, to have the polished cement floor, the DJ music and all that.
Right.
If I ran the world, I'd have a hotel that would have multiple. That'd be Anthony would like one of our traditional rooms, or would like one of our new edgy rooms, or whatever. You could probably have a hotel within a hotel.
But I also think what I'm finding is, and I'm doing a lot of speaking to college kids and millennials and hotels. I'm actually helping some hotels transition from Starwood to Marriott, and kind of, because they say everything's going to be perfect. Well, I could tell you, I've been talking to a lot of management companies and a lot of managers in these hotels, and it's not as flawless as they would like you to think it is. There's not that much difference between us, people our age, traveling, and the millennial traveling, because we use the same technology. We want exactly what they want. We want it fast. We want it easy. We want it clean. Nobody wants carpets in rooms anymore. Okay? Nobody really needs an oversized desk anymore. You still want a little desk in the room. Everybody wants comfortable seating. So I don't see this incredible separation between millennials. And you were saying the other day, millennials are now, the oldest millennials, 39. So it's not even millennials anymore. It's even the Z generation.
Generation Z, the oldest one of them are in college already.
Right. So my kids are Generation Z. So we're all, to me, when you travel, you all want efficiency. You all want comfort. So I don't think the music in the lobby or really there's not that big of a difference. And I think we've obsessed, and this is what we do in the industry, right? We hold on to something like technology. There's one piece of technology we know may not be right, but for some reason, one hotel has it, we all have to have it. And then we realize, oh, that doesn't work. So then we go into another technology. I think we're followers sometimes in this industry. And so what you're saying is exactly right. We can have one hotel with a couple of different rooms, and everybody will be happy.
Yep.
Yeah, but that's never going to happen because all the major hotel companies have to rationalize the creation of new brands in order to meet those quarterly results, et cetera. So listen to our Brands vs. Owners episode of Checking In if you want to get a little bit more deeply into this.
Was it
all
good?
of your listeners out there. I thought it was the best episode, mostly because I spoke most of the time.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Was I there?
Yeah.
I was probably
I don't really remember.
No, but it really is. It's I've traveled to a lot of 3-star hotels around the country, and one of my favorites is Holiday Inn Express, right? But I've stayed at the Courtyards, and I've stayed at a lot of them. And you put me in the middle of a lobby, I really can't tell you where I am anymore. It's like you put me in the middle of a town in the Midwest or really anywhere in America. I can't tell you where I am anymore because it's a Target, it's a McDonald's, it's a Exxon station. Everything looks the same. The only brand that I would say that I really feel recently has really, and I'll stick to Marriott. I think Moxie is a great brand in New York City because it feels different to me. But really, the lifestyle brand, the brand that I truly feel is a lifestyle, and we talked about this on one of our podcasts, is Margaritaville. Because that truly is a lifestyle. Yeah. I mean, Jimmy Buffett, a song became iconic. Matter of fact, I was at Margaritaville in Orlando, and he came in with a lot of the owners, investors were there, and he played a little concert for us. And he had no shoes on, right? And that's the brand. That feels
Still
like a lifestyle.
I missed that event, but I'm glad.
Well, I also think what happens is I remember years ago, Marriott, we're talking about different brands for different customers, and what we actually found out is many times the same customer in a different occasion. So when you're going to make a big pitch for a new client, you might want to be at a Ritz-Carlton.
Absolutely.
When you're taking your kid to college, you may want to stay at a Fairfield Inn. When you're at a big and so it turns out it was almost the same customer. You have a Marriott customer, or you might have a Hilton customer, or a Hyatt customer, but the different brands, they'll pick and choose a different brand based on where they are and the purpose of their trip.
Exactly. Even with my family, we do the same thing. It's if I'm traveling for a really nice vacation, I'm going to stay in a really nice Marriott. If I'm traveling with my crew, we're going to stay maybe at a Courtyard or Holiday Inn Express.
Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense to me. So, where do you see the hospitality industry as a whole going over the next 5-10 years? Do you think you'll be able to get more tourism here? Do you think that some of the hospitality product is going to change, maybe to appeal more towards international travelers? What's your crystal ball?
That's an easy question.
Simple as that. I think it's going to continue to grow where it's most convenient. It's going to follow the trends. Right now, hotels are growing in areas like Nashville's on fire.
Austin's on fire.
I mean, you look at these places that are there's cranes all over the place, and so the hotel business and lodge is going to follow. Where
Nashville was on fire 5 years ago. And and now it's even bigger.
Spectacular. Franklin, Tennessee. I wish I was smart enough to buy 10 acres in Franklin 15 years ago. It's like another city. And so, but it's going to follow areas like that. It's going to be real interesting to see how this Airbnb and lodging business plays out. Because right now there's a war, and the lodging folks say, hey, let's level the playing field. The Airbnb people will say, well, it's a different occasion and a different customer, your business customer. But it's going to be interesting to see how this disruptor society is going to play in the hotel business.
So let me ask you a question, because I'm actually going to facilitate a panel tomorrow with Chip Connolly, who's
Chip's a great guy.
Who obviously consulted for Airbnb. And one of my questions to him is, what do you say to hotel people that are against the Airbnb because they're a disruptor? So what do you say? So that question to you. If I'm a hotel owner and I own 30 hotels and there's Airbnbs popping up all over my towns, what do I do? Like, what do you think is the best advice?
I think, one, you've got to make sure that they play with a level playing field, that they're paying taxes.
What does that mean? Right.
Well, number one, they were not paying taxes. So if you're a hotel owner, the person comes in, checks in your hotel, plus they put tax on top of that, and Airbnb wasn't paying taxes. Life safety rules. A hotelier has to make sure they've got sprinkler systems, got security and all that. An Airbnb person,
right.
5 people could have the key to your front door.
Right, ADA requirements.
Yeah, ADA requirements.
Are we seeing more of
We're
that
seeing
happening?
more of that. It's going to be, I think what's going to happen down the road, it's just like the timeshare business. Timeshare business was a rough business, and then Marriott got into it, and they started saying, when you own a Marriott, you've got the Atlantic in front of you and Marriott behind you, and they actually changed the timeshare business. Then Hilton got into it, Disney got into it. I think what you're going to see, and it'll be whether it's 5 years, is one of the big changes is going to break and create a partnership with Airbnb.
I said that about 3 years ago.
And
I was on a panel.
That is going to be the change you're going to see. And once that happens, it'll be just like you've seen the proliferation of brands. People are going to say, how do we work together with that?
I think we're already seeing the first phases of that with more of that notion of co-living and sense of community that some of the brands are starting to see. I think Hilton's move with the Motto brand, which is more of that, is already starting to try to combat that. Motto. It's I would say it's their newest brand, but they just introduced another brand this past week as we're recording this. So
I heard they just announced another brand in the last 2 seconds.
I wouldn't be surprised. I think that was Marriott. Yeah. Excuse me. So I do think that we're going to see a blending in different ways. I don't know if it'll be a formal partnership with an Airbnb type of organization, because I feel like Airbnb now is trying to separate themselves almost from their properties on one hand, but then trying to create their own type of properties on the other.
I think one of the bigger challenges Airbnb has is going to be standards. And how do you know what you're going to get? The one thing that I think that Marriott, Hilton, Hyatt did, you knew what you're going to get. You're pretty darn close to, when you went in that hotel, what to expect. Airbnb, sometimes the photograph doesn't match the experience,
and that's why corporate travel for Airbnb is very difficult, because you don't know what to expect.
So once they figure out standards, it's going to be very interesting.
All right, I'm going to agree and simultaneously disagree with that statement, because there's a lot of new brands that are popping up within the Airbnb ecosystem that are going to be strong and relevant on their own. One in particular I'm thinking of is a company called Sonder, for example. Right, they rent out entire buildings, brand new construction buildings. They do a long-term lease on it, and then they market it on their website and through Airbnb.
Margarita's doing that too.
Right. So I think we're going to see more of those types of brands that are using Airbnb as a mechanism as opposed to being Airbnb.
So what the hell's the difference? I'll challenge you on that. What's the difference of that and a hotel? There's no difference. You just have a platform for Airbnb.
Right.
One of the things that gets me, and I wrote an article, I can't remember, on Forbes or New York Times, I can't remember where it was, and it was somebody asked me about Airbnb, and I wrote an article about it. And what I said, I tried to be really respectful. I have no problem with Airbnb, but I'm a hospitality expert. And the first thing I learned in Hospitality 101 is safety and security matters. And one of the things, to your point, taxes is one thing. Yes, it should be a level playing field with taxes. But the one thing that I cannot accept, if my daughter came to me and said, hey, Dad, I'm going to Italy and I'm going to spend 2 weeks in Airbnb, I'd be like, no, I'm going to give you more money and you're going to spend 2 weeks at the Waldorf or 2 weeks at the Courtyard or whatever it is, because I feel safe. It's kind of what's happening now. She's in a dormitory, and next year her and her friends are going to rent a house. I'm going to go through that house with a fine-tooth comb, and I'm going to be insane when it comes to the safety and security and protection of that house. So I have a big problem. I have no problem with Airbnb being a competitor, if you want to call it a competitor. I have a problem with forget about being legislation about safety and that you have to have a fire alarm. How do you, as an owner of a building, knowing people are coming into your building, knowing you don't have smoke detectors or sprinkler systems or secure doors, how do you sleep at night? I have no understanding of how people sleep at night. So if you really want, and I also don't think it's as big a competition as people make it out to be. I'll give you an example. If you're in New York City right now, and we went from 75,000 room nights 6 years ago to now it's 125, 130,000 room nights. Those are hotels. So if you tell me there's 30 Airbnbs that just opened, well, I care about the 500-room hotel that just opened across the street. Am I really worried about the 30 Airbnbs that just opened around the city? I don't think that's going to really – I'm not really worried about it. I don't think you've seen a big impact in New York City, especially that everybody's fighting with them. But so I don't think it's that big of an impact as people make it out to be. And I also think that it should be, and I'll say, illegal for someone to rent it out if their life safety isn't in place. Now, of course, you're not going to take a a room in somebody's house and say you have to sprinkler the whole thing. But there's got to be some kind of standard that people feel safe. And it's just beyond me that we haven't been able to accomplish that.
Yeah, and that's where the lodging business really in New York is finding fault with just what you talked about, is someone who's built an apartment complex and says it's now going to be it's not a hotel, right. It's Airbnb, and it doesn't have the safety standards, it doesn't have the sprinkler system, and that's a real problem. And that's a big thing that the hoteliers in New York City are against.
And beyond that, it has a potential to damage the character of a neighborhood while also artificially inflating real estate prices. So it's a challenge. You look in places, Amsterdam, which I mentioned earlier, is one particular place. Venice is another particular place. They're suffering from over-tourism because of all of these Airbnbs that have been in downtown that's changing the whole nature of what made that city appealing to begin with.
Well, when you say over-tourism, is it over-tourism or is it not efficient tourism? I think there's a difference, right? When you have 300 people staying in one hotel, everyone kind of knows where the people are. There's efficiencies. When you have 300 people staying in people's homes all over the place, it's just more chaotic.
Yeah, and I think this over-tourism is something we have to take a big look at in the United States. It started in Iceland, it started in parts of Spain and around the world, but now you're hearing it in Santa Barbara, you're hearing it in the Hamptons, you're hearing it in Utah and places like that. And a lot of times the tourists are getting blamed for inefficiencies in the infrastructure. They say, it's so crowded, it must be the tourists. No, it's a problem because your roads haven't kept up.
Right.
Right. That being said, if anybody wants to rent a room at the Haussman Pool Club and Smokehouse on Long Island, just give me a call.
If you will be
I got a great couch for you.
Oh, okay. You're going to be there? No.
Sorry. All right. So I think we should probably think about wrapping this up right now.
I have one other question. Kid coming out of college wants to go in the hospitality business. What's your greatest advice to give them?
Greatest advice is do it because you're getting part of it. One of the biggest industries in the world. You can work anywhere. If you're in technology, you sure as hell better be in Boston, Washington, Austin, or the West Coast.
Right.
If you're in hospitality, it doesn't matter whether you're in Fargo, Fort Lauderdale, or Fiji. So I think there's great opportunity. The other thing is to hustle, to work hard, and it's one of the few industries where you can come in without an MIT, engineering degree and one day be running a hotel company. It's still one of the greatest future opportunities. The only thing that bothers me, it starts out a little slow from a wage standpoint, and I think even the hotels are getting pushed to have to start paying even better to compete for the talent.
Yeah, but you know what? And that was a challenge even when I started in this industry. I was being paid $24,000 a year to be the front office manager at the Plaza Hotel. So all that made me want to be is general manager as quickly as humanly possible because I couldn't afford to live on that money even 30 years ago. So yes, it is, but it gives you such a tremendous opportunity because you're working at the Plaza Hotel, you're working at the Waldorf, you're working at these great hotels. So your wages is maybe in the beginning is light, but you're given opportunities to do amazing things. And if you really want to make money in the hotel industry, become a banquet waiter in New York City.
All right.
Well, I think, Anthony, the one thing is it gives you the opportunity to learn so many different skills.
Absolutely.
I mean, you've got every single day is different. If you're in the plumbing business, every single day is the same, or selling cars. This is every day is different. You learn so many life skills, and you can grow so rapidly. We did a big study on lifetime wages, and it's a myth that people in hotels don't make that much money. Over a career, people that started in our industry or stayed in our industry make more than almost every other industry except financial services.
Really?
And it's only 0.4 or 0.2% difference. It's the greatest industry for women. It's the greatest industry for minorities. They far out earn their colleagues in other industries.
It's funny. My daughter said to me, she's a junior and she's going into college, and she said on her predictive index came back that hotel manager was high up there on her skill set. And I said, babe, maybe go in the hotel business if you want to. And she goes, there's no money in the hotel business. She literally said that. I have no idea where she took that from. So I give her a tour of our house and our pool and our brand new beautiful cars. I was like, where did that come from? That there's no money in the hotel business. Like, I don't get that. So there's no money when you come out of college if you want to work at the front desk. You're not going to drive a brand new car. but the opportunity and the people you meet. And I knew a person that was a sales manager at the Plaza Hotel and then became the manager of two very big celebrities. If I mentioned their names, you would know who they are. Became the manager of them. And then she was a salesman at the Plaza Hotel. My friend, who's the chef concierge of the 5-star hotel in New York City, is the New York City manager of a very big star. If I would name her, you would know who she is. And the person handles everything for this person in New York City and makes supplement income. So I think exactly. I think but you have to shut up for a long time and work your ass off.
Yep.
And then at some point you can start having an opinion. But in this industry, you've got to prove it. And then once you prove it as you're on time, you're respectful, guests are writing great comments about you, at some point it's going to hit. And once that hits, there's no stopping you.
Well, we're here at the Forbes 5-Star Awards, and it's the top general managers around the world that are here.
Best.
And if you say tonight, how many of you have met the head of a religion? Every person stands up. How many of you have met at least one president? Every person is still standing. How many of you have met and spent time with CEOs from 10 different businesses? They're still standing. It's one of the few businesses that you get the exposure to a side of life that you couldn't imagine. I mean, I in my job, I started $100 a week working housekeeping after the pool. I've met with 5 presidents. I've met with, I can't tell you how many corporate leaders. And it's a life that you can't imagine when you were making $100. But the bottom line, it's braved so many rewards. And you know that. Your history is phenomenal.
When I came out of the Air Force, I went to the Plaza Hotel, and I have a wonderful Stevie Wonder story. He played me a song for keeping up a restaurant, or keeping open a restaurant. I met I tell my daughters all the time, because like, do you meet this person? I said, if they're under 40, I haven't met them. If they're over 40, I've met them, because I haven't really been a general manager of a hotel for a while. And I've met everyone from Barbara Streisand to the president to, the current president used to call me Tony. I was there when he married Marla Maples. Mm-hmm. I was there when Michael Jackson came to the Plaza Hotel. And then the history. I mean, when the Beatles came to the Plaza. So, I mean, I was 27 when I left. My career was done at 27. I was like, if I never work in the hotel industry again, this was the greatest accomplishment of my life.
I think your career was done the day you decided to do this podcast with me.
That's true. Well, I'm trying to resurrect your career. It's really hard. But anyway, so at the end of the podcast, I'm sorry, Don. At the end of the podcast,
your segue is beautiful.
I like when I'm controlling the podcast, because you don't let me control it.
I like it too.
So at the end of the podcast, we ask a question of, the question is, tell us something we don't know. And it could be in and out of the business, it could be about your family, it could be about something that you do outside of what you do for a living. So tell us something we don't know.
You'd probably not guess, looking at me, that I'm a 101st Airborne Paratrooper, Bronze Star, Vietnam veteran.
Wow, that's absolutely amazing.
He was service. I was.
How do you have the guts to jump out of an airplane?
They push you.
There were no guts. I was trying everything I could to stay out of Vietnam, and I heard that parachute people were going to Germany, so I signed up for airborne, hoping to stay out of Vietnam. It didn't work, but at least I jumped out of a plane.
Wow.
I was in the Air Force. Okay. And people say, why'd you join the Air Force over the Army? I said, because we drop them off and we leave.
Thanks for the ride.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there's a gentleman, Chris Dunick, who I just saw. I haven't seen him in years, and he used to be, my wife used to babysit for him. He's now 43 years old. And when I got out of the Air Force, his mom, Linda, came to me and said, hey, my son wants to go in the Army. I said, I want to talk to him. I want to let him go in the Air Force. So I'll never forget this. I had this little car. He gets in my car. And I said, I'm going to take you to the Air Force Recruiter. Okay, we'll go to the Air Force Recruiter. And I'm talking about, you're going to get your college education. You can work in an office. You don't have to be a grunt. You don't have to take that hill. You don't have to jump out of an airplane. It's really a great lifestyle to be in the Air Force. I was there 5 years. There's nothing. I was a protocol officer. Nothing better. We're driving home, and he said, thank you so much. I know now I don't want to be in the Air Force. I want to be in the Army. I want to be on the front line. And he became a Green Beret. He's been to conflict probably more than any human being alive. He's been in the military for 20 years, so he's probably been to war zones countless times. Then he became a fireman in special operations. And at 9/11, he actually pulled the last fireman out of 9/11. So this kid, who's 43 years old now, has seen more of the world and more conflict and more tragedy than anyone alive that I know of. Actually, I want to write a book with him. But anyway, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
So, Glenn, tell us about your time in the infantry. Go ahead.
It's going to be a very short story. I was an infant once, and
Well, so did you not go in the military because you were Wuss or what?
Pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's fair.
Also, I don't think we do a great job, us Jews out there on the front line. At least
Hey,
the Israelis do a great job, not the North American domesticated Jew.
I'm gonna support every single Jewish person that's ever served our country, and they've served it just as valiantly as anybody else. So I'm gonna disagree with you.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that. We try. So Anthony, tell me something I don't know about you. If there's still anything left that I don't know about you.
Okay. Yes. I joined the United States Air Force, and I went to the MEP station, where basically you take all your training, not training, but exams, physical exams. And the doctor asked me, and I would join so I can go to college and then become a pilot. So either about 50 yards, not 50 yards, maybe 20 feet away, there were a green and a red dot. And he goes, which one's the green one, which one's the red one? I could barely see them to begin with. And I got it wrong. And then he put another dot with another color, and I got it wrong. And he goes, basically, welcome to the Air Force, but you'll never fly.
Never fly.
So I joined the Air Force, but because I was colorblind, I couldn't fly. So I did the next best thing. And I had actually the most dangerous job in the United States Air Force.
You realize you have an orange jacket on, don't you?
I do. It's orange. I thought it was purple. So I had the most interesting and dangerous job in the United States military. And people laugh at me when I say this, but I was a protocol officer. I poured coffee. That coffee was really hot. So tell us something we don't know about you, Glenn. You weren't in the military.
Yeah, I got no military experience, and now I feel suddenly embarrassed by all.
Well,
of
you
that.
should.
Yeah,
you should.
I got nothing when it comes to that. I actually was very fortunate. I grew up at the right time,
the in-between time.
In the in-between time. So because of people like you, Roger, you really took care of a lot of these issues, and I was very fortunate not to have to do that. Plus, I would have been physically able to anyway. I would have had to gone into one of the entertainment divisions or something like that of the
Listen, a good friend of mine, Jeffrey Robinson, was in the United States Air Force, and he was a writer. And he was in public relations, so
that's something I could have done.
Maybe,
but a real I don't know is I recently stayed at an Airbnb in Puerto Rico, and it was the first time I did an Airbnb where it was actually somebody's apartment, and I felt really weird about the whole experience, and I don't think I'd feel comfortable staying in somebody else's quote unquote place because I felt like I was invading their privacy. I didn't really feel comfortable, and I didn't really feel like I could be myself.
And were they in the apartment? Like, did they have a second apartment?
I don't know where the guy went, but there were cabinets and stuff with little tiny locks on it, and it just felt weird. Plus, I must have been in a kid's bedroom because there were glow-in-the-dark stars on the roof and the ceiling.
Yeah, I'm not interested. Thank you very much.
Very, very strange, very unusual.
I'm out.
So, but it is important that I do those kind of stays to learn about it, so I can help share all that information with all our amazing listeners out
Roger,
there.
thank you so much for your service, and give me one experience before we let you go that you'll never forget from your military experience. One specific incident.
I used to call in artillery and being dropped out and calling in artillery, and then it getting dark and them saying to us, "We'll get you in the morning." And I'm a college kid from Jersey,
oh my God.
And there's 6 of us trying, and I know there's 150 Viet Cong around me, and that to me, we got through it. But it was, I'm going, "What do you got to be kidding me? That's not the army I signed up for."
So you were in the jungle at night waiting for someone to come pick you up.
Yeah, they dropped us off, and we'd called an artillery, and then this group that we were calling artillery, and they got ambushed, and they were pulling out the people, and they just said, "Sergeant Dow, sorry, you and your crowd has to stay there. It's too dark. We'll get you in the morning." And that, to me, wow. I wasn't ready for that.
And they got you, though. Thank God.
Yeah, they got me in the morning.
What a scary night that must have been.
Sure.
Wow. So if people want to learn more about the U.S. travel and everything that you're doing, how can they find you guys?
Just go on our website, ustravel.org. Real simple.
Excellent. And Anthony, how can we find you, sir?
You can find me at Anthony Hotels anywhere you want to be on the internet. And please listen to my other podcast called Extraordinary, where we interview ordinary people doing extraordinary things, and like yourself, Roger. So if you're ever in New York, I'd love to have you on that podcast as well.
Thank you.
And I am at Traveling Glenn, and be sure to listen to my other shows. Of course, the Mothership, the No Vacancy podcast. Of course, we got the Hotel Design podcast, the Hotel Tech podcast, the Business of Hotels podcast, and lots more fun stuff.
Can I ask you a question, Glenn?
Yes, sir.
Is there anything else you can do besides podcasts? Do you have any other talents?
I do shoot some videos every once in a while, and I keep waiting for to get a TV show, but you keep getting them all.
Yeah, I take offense to No Vacancy being the Mothership. I just take offense to that.
Well, it is the first one that I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But this is the most important one that I do.
We get the most interesting guests.
It is. It's really true. But if you do want to hear from words from the top CEOs in the hospitality business every single week, check out the No Vacancy podcast. So, for Roger, Anthony, and myself, Glenn, thanks for checking in.
It's Checking In with Anthony and Glenn, teaching you to be the hotelier that you wanna be. It's Checking In with Anthony and Glenn.